All right, today we're going to be talking about presumption. So this is going to be about critical debates and how you would utilize defense to make it so you will always win one of these debates and never lose on one of these arguments ever again, depending on what side you want to read it as. So the way that critical debates or the way all debate works in general is that arguments need five things to win or in order to be complete. First is uniqueness, something that explains a unique impact or a unique claim in the world that is not inevitable or already happening that you have the ability to change. Two is a link, something that has happened that has caused the like necessary thing that has led to the problem. Internal link is also part of this, like what has caused the impact. The impact is obviously the problem and what's bad about it, and solvency is how you'll fix that. All of these are necessary components in a debate, but more specifically, we're going to focus on the solvency part of the debate in the first place, in K-debate. So there are two main arguments we need to think about. The first is subject formation. Basically, this argument says, or the goal of this argument is to prove that debaters will change their mind in the face of critical literature. This is a necessary burden because even if you are right about every pre-fiat argument you make, if no one ends up believing it, there is no point in voting for you because even if like you presented the most abstract, smart, and best idea ever, if no one inevitably changes their mind, there's no point because the goal of your argument is to change people's minds and fix something. But if you can't do that, then you can't solve your offense. This is like a necessary component, and is like necessary to win in like literally every K debate. So this is something you should take up debaters on. A good way to think about this is like, even if you're right, that like the event changes, like, but people in general, as people, are still racist, sexist, ableist, whatever. You haven't done anything to solve that. You just changed the structure of the event without fixing the actual problem. So if you do not win, you can change minds. You cannot gain any pre-fiat offense or offense not about the topic. The second argument is ballot solvency. Basically, this argument is that when like as explains that you as a judge, or explains why you as a judge needs to assign the ballot to the K team. This is a necessary burden too, because if the other team wins, the debaters change minds. That doesn't mean you have to vote for them if the ballot does nothing and or there's still solvency even if you vote for the other team. So basically, you need to win that debaters change their minds, and you also need to win that you need the ballot alongside debaters changing their minds. Otherwise, there's a good analogy to use. You wouldn't vote for a policy argument or a substance argument that says extinction is bad with no way to solve it. Otherwise, that would justify, the K team saying, oh, racism is bad, but they can't solve it. So like, why should you vote for it just because they pointed out a problem? So that's like the whole thesis. You cannot just point out problems. You need the ability to solve said problems that you point out. Otherwise, debate would literally just like be unfair and be whoever presents the most problems ever and whoever presents the biggest problems, even if we have no way of getting rid of it or solving it. Which means, this would be pretty bad for debate. So this is another necessary burden that debaters must meet. I think like this argument is the most intuitive besides subject formation because it's like literally about the event itself, and like these are theoretical arguments that you don't need evidence for. So a lot of the arguments you can make are smart analytical ones that can be easy to explain. Now let's talk about the types of subject formation and ballot solvency arguments. So for subject formation arguments, the main thesis is that obviously debate changes people's minds. There are two ways you can go about this. The first is that you can read a scientific study, one that says that repetition or habits or memory or something along those lines causes us to change our minds. There are a lot of fantastic cards on the wiki for this. I know I've read cards like Maise, Maise, Dodson, Ingram is another one, and Jewel. All of them say that because of the way neurobiological dynamics work, is that when you continuously do something, you start to tend to believe it. Because like it gets repetitized in your mind. So those usually like require like a scientific study usually. and like they just require scientific study because you cannot like give like reasons as to why without like like an infinite long time debate that explains why. So usually you need a scientific study that says like the way neurobiology works is that people change their minds because repetition, competition, etc. The second argument is like competition or the way it works. Basically, like like in a competitive environment, people change their minds like in order to win. So you can make arguments that are like the K changes people's minds, and they start believing in it because they want to win, so they keep reading it more. So like that sort of thing. But I think the scientific study is the best one, because it's usually harder to disprove because a lot of the arguments you can make is like, look, they have made answers as a high schooler. We have made arguments from a scientist's perspective, which obviously is a lot more qualified, and has a degree and is a lot better off than, the high schooler, which is probably a lot better than, the inverse. So those are the subject formation arguments. I thought if like those are pretty simple, but I'll explain later if y'all need. The second is how to answer them. So first, you can read your own scientific studies that say no subject formation. For example, there's this study, or like article written by Noves who uses studies to prove that like people do not change their minds in the face of epistemic confrontation or critical literature. In which case that is a scientific study that proves like, look, people do not change their minds, because like the warrant Noves gives at least is that people do not change their minds when debate is unfair. So you'll say like, look, when debate is unfair, no one is receptive to changing their minds because they think they lost because it's unfair. So that is an argument you can make. Arguments to say no subject formation. These next four, all causes different visions lying in switch sides, are all analytical, and I'll explain each one. The first is alternative causes. Basically means that people don't change their minds because they have participate in things like their religion, their school, and their friends all offer different and opposite beliefs of the critique. For example, if they read a queer K, but you go to Catholic, but you're a Catholic who is devoutly Catholic and goes to mass, you're not going to change your mind and start believing that like you like think it's okay, just because of this one K debate, because you do so much else outside of debate that it prevents you from actually changing your mind. So hold up, wait. So like all causes is just like things you do outside of debate that overwhelm the ability for the K to change people's minds. The second one is that it's like different visions of the topic, or K debate, not topic, different visions of K debate. Basically, every K team reads a different critique. It's really rare to see a K team read the same K in the same year as someone else, like literally the exact same K. Basically, what this implies is that since there are so many different K teams, it's impossible to set a standard or like a norm, or like believe in anything because all the K teams say different things. So you don't actually like, change your mind because the K teams all, say a lot of different things. So like you don't know which one to believe, or like many of them influence you at once, etc. So this argument is just like, even if they could change your minds theoretically, there are too many of them to do so in the first place because no multiple teams read the exact same critique. So they all say different things and we can't believe in them all because some of them fundamentally contradict with other ones. The third argument is lying. Basically, this argument says the debaters read verifiably false arguments all the time, like nuclear war is good, or climate change is good, or stuff along those lines, which are fake arguments, obviously, but are designed to win competitive debate rounds that don't necessarily rely on truth to win. This says that because debaters are so accustomed to reading arguments that do not mean anything in terms of truth or value, that means they also would not believe your critique and treat it the same way, like you're reading it to just win. And this is just debate, so obviously nothing is real in debate. So it implies that we do not change our minds because people read false arguments all the time, so we also assume the critique is false. So that means you don't change your minds because people read false arguments. That argument I think is also pretty simple, and pretty explanatory. The last argument is switching sides. I think that is, in my opinion, the most complicated of them, but once you understand it, it makes sense. Basically, this argument says that if you were to read your K on the af or neg, whatever, if you were to affirm or negate against it, in an instant you would like answer their arguments, or you'd like debate it and beat it because you want to win. So basically, if they prove that you want to win debates, that means you would affirm or negate in your own against your own arguments, which means there's no cognitive attachment to them because you literally compete against your own arguments that you claim should change people's minds, and you learn how to beat them. This means that whenever you switch sides and you cannot defend the K, you will always beat your own critique if it's read against you, or just any critiques in general, which proves we never, believe in the things we get told because we get better at answering our own arguments. I think like those are the main subject formation arguments and the main answers to them. And in my opinion, they're all self-explanatory. So the next portion of our arguments is ballot solvency. There are a few arguments. The first is norming. Basically, this says that whenever you receive the ballot, debate changes, as in people see arguments are winning more, and they start to lean towards those arguments, because they see that they're winning, which promotes them, because that's how like norming works. When good arguments win, more people read the good arguments. So that is essentially the K argument. The second argument is deterrence. This argument is saying that like when debaters are racist, sexist, ableist, etc., when they lose, they stop being racist, sexist, ableist, etc., in order to win, because they want to win. They don't do this that causes them to lose. So you say that like, look, well, if they lose, they'll be less incentivized to do this per competitive incentives because they want to win debates. So they will be more incentivized to be less racist, sexist, ableist, etc. The last argument is microaffirmation. This is basically saying that like if violence has occurred in the round, you should give me the ballot to make me feel better, to like feel better and like rectify the abuse that has occurred and give me health, etc. Through the ballot, because the ballot is like nourishing or whatever. This argument is like more tied to critiques that debaters like to go for microaggressions with, because like the ballot micro affirms me as like my identity in a person, and it is healthy for me, which is good. That is like on the lesser side of like more popular ballot solvency arguments, because it's like part of the microaggressions argument in general. The last argument, I forgot to write it on the slideshow, but in my opinion is the best one, so you should like write it down if you don't know it. It's golden rule. Basically, this argument says that you should, as a judge, assume that debaters don't need to prove that we are able to solve racism, sexism, ableism, etc., because otherwise it exhausts minority debaters who try to call out racism, but the judge tells them, look, I can hear you out. I can understand, but I can't vote for you because you can't solve it, which exhausts minority debaters who always try to call out racism and intercommunal grievances in the debate space. But like it exhausts them to keep trying to do so and keep losing for it. Additionally, it also puts debaters on their best behavior, because the debaters know that the racism cannot get solved by the ballot, then they don't have an incentive to not be racist, which encourages more racism in general. So the argument is that you should assume that it solves it and inflate your power of the ballot, even if on a technical level it doesn't, because otherwise the alternative is worse. This is less like a ballot solvency argument, but it's like an argument you can use to say you don't need solvency. So that's why I put it there. And I think this argument is pretty good, and it is easy to win. So the answers to all these arguments generally are double down, read it, and lose, forced negation, and judge choice. But I'll say the specific answers to each one, like each individual argument, like norming, deterrence, microaffirmation, etc. So the first argument is double down. If they are right that debates shape subjectivity, and like you need the ballot for this, it's worse, because instead of norming, as in debaters read your arguments, they just get better at beating them or updating their blocks, because of the innate competitive nature of debate, to get better at beating arguments to improve so you don't lose as much. This causes more racism, sexism, ableism, etc., because they get better at defending racist practices, sexist practices, ableist practices, instead of actually reading less ableist, racist arguments, etc. So they get better at beating it, which is worse. The second one is read it and lose. This says that for all of these arguments that you've listed, you do not need the ballot. You can just read your argument and then lose for it. because like norming, like you can if your argument's getting read a lot, even if you're losing, it's proof that it's getting spread around the debate space. And like deterrence is like the point is like you can read your argument and lose to solve it, which is one of the best, I think, most intuitive arguments the non-K team can make. Because like usually the ballot solvency arguments are not that good. Thirdly is forced negation bad. Basically it's like forcing us to defend or answer your argument. And the needs for the ballot is violent because it's forcing us to say your identity doesn't matter, your method is bad, which is more offensive than the inverse because like we are forced to say that your personal identity is worse for the issue you're trying to fix, which is like violent to people. The fourth and last argument is judge choice. Basically, this says if debaters are called out for racism, sexism, like any ism in debate, they should end the round and the judge should take it based on truth or tab should intervene. This is an answer to ballot solvency because you can give reasons why this would solve your offense better. For example, debaters see that Strake lost to the K on a truth level because the judge ended the round, which shows they're actually racist and people look down on us, which puts us in community crosshairs. It encourages us to be on our best behavior if the judge were to end the round or tap to intervene, which is another ballot solvency argument that is like pretty good. It's not normally considered one, but it can be utilized as one, like if you like really like think about it and do a lot of work on it. Now here are the answers to like the ballot solvency arguments I talked about for the K team. Norming is incorrect a lot of the time because they're like even if debate arguments get read or things change because of norms, there's are a lot of other factors for them, like structural discussions. Like people can go talk about things and come to the conclusion that this is better even without the ballot. It's also unverifiable that their argument will create change. And judges can't vote on unverifiable arguments because otherwise you could claim your opponent literally did everything outside the round and the judge would be forced to do it. Or like you could say you donate like $5 billion to like a charity. And there'd be no way to verify it, but under your logic, you'd vote for it, which proves like you cannot vote for unverifiable arguments. So the thesis answer to norming is that unverifiable arguments are bad. The answer to deterrence is double down, or like it's just doubling down. Like debaters get better at not or getting better at answering arguments, updating their blocks, etc. Which means that debaters don't change or like they don't listen to your like solvency arguments. The third is micro affirmation, but it's bad to tie the ballot to your health because every time you lose, you'll feel even worse and more worse. So it's bad to think of the ballot as like a micro affirmation for health, because it causes you to feel worse. Which is like, like mostly true. Debaters can't win 100% of rounds. So like if you lose a lot, you'll just feel even worse if you tie the ballot to health. The golden rule argument, like you don't need the ballot to solve it. Like you can signal on the ballot that racism is bad and we need to do something about it, but there's no reason like you need the ballot for it. Which means like, you don't need it because you can call it out and people can recognize it's bad and actually do things to fix it without the ballot. Those are all like the arguments that like are there and exist. So if y'all have any questions, feel free to ask.
So when I'm running Ks, I hear a lot of people just respond with the classic, like, hey, like hundreds of people have ran this K before. Like, what's the best thing to say against stuff like that?
Um, so like when people say like hundreds of people ran this K before, you can say no evidence for it. Like you as a judge cannot vote on things that occurred outside the round because of the thing I said earlier. Like this is also an argument the K team can utilize because like, they'll say like, oh, your people read this K, this K, this K, but you can say, look, like you cannot vote on these because you don't know like if they actually read them, because you as a judge cannot, like intervene in the face of that because it'd be like unfair. Also other arguments, is that like your uniqueness argument, which I was talking about earlier, like even if they've read it before, you need to keep on doing it because it hasn't changed anything, which is like, yeah, like the K needs to change debate more.
Well, so if you're saying that like your uniqueness argument proves it hasn't changed anything, wouldn't that like just like
Oh, well,
prove
you can have
the
like
ballot
examples, like
solvency?
you can like have like empirics of change, like or like your subject formation arguments, um, we'll say like people change their minds, and then if you win like golden rule doesn't like require change. It just says like you don't need to win change in order to win your arguments, because anything else makes like racism, sexism, ableism a low cost option. Um which makes it so like even if they're right, like if don't treat it like this because the alternative is worse.
Okay. Another question, like sort of off from the lecture, but like, I run a lot of queer Ks. I've hit like a few people running like those queer Ks type stuff. How do I respond, or the picks, like, how do I respond to those?
So the apps, just be topicality. The picks, it would be like you have to answer the link argument. There's like no getting around it, otherwise you'll just lose. So you'll have to answer like the reason you were queer phobic. And then you say like perm do both or perm do the counterplan. It's the same as the app. Um, but that's how you would answer those arguments.
Well, like those queer picks where it's just like saying the word queer is exclusive to like people of color, like those picks.
Oh, like if you were the K debater?
Yeah, so like I'm running like a KF, the neg comes in.
Oh, I don't really have much experience with the queer case, but I know like there are a lot of cards that say like saying the word queer is good, for queer people. But you just need a lot of evidence, saying otherwise on that question. But I don't really know because I don't read that K.
Okay. Well, what case do you read?
I read like topic specific Ks, like I don't read like identity Ks. So for example, like on the UK topic, I read a genealogy critique, about like how reading competing historical narratives is good, to solve, like racism, because like we recognize the colonial pasts of countries and then we bring them to light and then we talk about them.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. You have any questions, Jacob?
Uh, sure. Can you go back to the slide?
Oh, yeah. Hold up.
Yeah. Okay. Just let me know.
All right, wait. All right, yeah.
Perfect. Uh, okay. I guess like, how did Ekin tell you to respond to the different vision stuff?
Oh, here, wait. I like so the different visions argument is one here. Let me just pull up my
It's like
file.
kind of silly, bro, but like, I don't know, like the current block I have for it seems fine. It just seems like such a dumb argument, bro.
Yeah, like the argument as a whole isn't that good, but like I guess like we don't have like an answer like in our file, but I guess like the different visions of the topic is you can utilize golden rule to answer it. And also like even if K teams have different visions, that doesn't disprove like our like there's no reason why people can't believe in multiple things at once. Um, you know, two ideas can be true. Um, and like they have not said that anyone's reading arguments that contradict ours, like any critiques. Um, so like even if they're different visions, like there's no reason why those visions can't be together. But I don't really know. No one has said different visions against us.